The customer champion. We all want them. We all seek them out. We all try to nurture them, identify them, build them up, coach them such that they can be our champion on our behalf inside of their own customer organization. Someone who's willing to take the banner of our company, of our solution, and carry it forth on our behalf behind closed doors and over the horizon, even when we're not present, and win their colleagues over and build consensus around a course of action that ultimately leads to a deal with us. That truly is a customer champion. What's really interesting, though, is when you look at star performing sellers and the kinds of stakeholders they're really looking to connect to inside the customer organization, it turns out they're not looking for champions at all. And to understand why, so we laid all this out in the Challenger Customer. This idea, in fact, is the core concept that sits at the center of that entire book. But what star performers are really looking for is someone that we ultimately came to call a mobilizer. And to understand the difference, it's important to understand really what is a champion about and what is a mobilizer about. And if you think about from a champion perspective, stop and think for just a moment what that word really embodies. It is a deeply supplier-centric concept. We want someone who's a champion for us, someone who go inside their own organization and talk about us, someone who's willing to build consensus with their colleagues around us. It's all focused on, hey, we like us, but maybe you like us. Can you go get everyone else to like us too? And in episode, I think it was 35 or 36, we talked about a lot about customer centricity and how the better way to go about this is not to be so much customer centric or supplier centric, but to be supplier agnostic. And it's sure enough, that concept didn't come from nowhere. That came from actually a lot of research. And it turns out that star performing sellers are actually looking for a completely different customer stakeholder altogether. And there's a lot of data and research behind this. It's laid out in the book. But really, what they're looking for is someone who has two specific attributes. They're looking for someone who is particularly good at building consensus and driving change inside their organization. That's it. Someone who can drive change and build consensus. Now, why do I need someone who can drive change? Because that's ultimately what we're selling. We all sell the same thing. We're trying to get our customers to change their behavior in some fashion or another, from status quo to working with us, or from buying a little from us to a lot from us, or buying from the competition to buying from us, right? One way or another, we all sell the same thing, which is change. And that means we need someone inside the organization who can act as that kind of change agent to mobilize the organization, not to buy our stuff, but to change their behavior. Now, to do that, they're going to have to also simultaneously be able to build consensus inside their organization. And through a lot of data and a lot of research that we laid out in the book, we ultimately came to call these individuals mobilizers. Now, what's really interesting about mobilizers is one of the things we know about them is that they're not really looking for a supplier. That's not the thing that gets them to mobilize. What they're looking for is an idea, a concept, an insight, something that can materially change the way that their organization works for the better. A way to improve performance, to reduce cost, to mitigate risk, to increase revenue, to drive growth, some sort of goodness that can come from taking a course of action. So the way that you engage a mobilizer isn't by getting them to love your product. It is by helping them understand a course of action and how that course of action may be beneficial to their company in some fashion. We actually called this the mobilizer dog whistle in the book, but the whole idea is that what mobilizers are looking for is an insight not about you and your company and your product and your capabilities. What they're looking for is an insight not about your company, but an insight about their company. And what you're really looking for is someone who will then take action around that insight, who will drive change, who will build consensus around that course of action. And you want to do this in such a way that that course of action, of course, then leads back to your unique strength. There's a lot packed into that one comment, and that's why we wrote a whole book on it. But nonetheless, this is very different than a champion. The litmus test that we would use to measure someone's championness versus mobilizerness is quite different. Do they love us? Can they talk about our product? Versus, are they excited about this course of action? Do they see how this solution, this perspective is going to help them materially perform better? And do they see the connection of that solution back to our unique strengths? So as we think about who we want to connect to inside the organization, at the end of the day, we have to solve for two things. We have to solve for consensus and we have to solve for change. And we have to find the people who are particularly good at doing that. And then we have to give them what they want, which is the insight that's going to mobilize or motivate them in the first place to go have those, frankly, hard conversations. Are you looking for mobilizers? Are you looking for champions? Are you trying to drive change? Are you trying to push your product? That's the difference.